Subscribe now. Hit the alarm for political destruction. Jasmine Crockett's one acknowledgement larboard Barron Trump absolutely speechless. You won't accept this. In below than 2 minutes, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett dismantled the son of a billionaire animate on civic television. What you're about to attest in wasn't a loofah debate. It was a masterclass in how alertness defeats privilege, how accomplished Trump's entitlement, and how one altogether crafted acknowledgement can leave a dish absolutely aghast on animate TV. Over 4 actor Americans watched as an atremendous woman who already juggled 3 jobs to pay her way through Law Academy stood face to face with Barron Trump, beneficiary to a political dynasty, and addled to complete ability activating with surgical precision. What began as a complacent advance to belittle her acquired into article far greater. A defining moment that fabricated the nation catechism what administration absolutely means. This is a dramatized retelling, but the emotions, inequities, and quiet judgments that women embodies a blush face aback they cartel to advance abide acutely real. The amphitheater lights dimmed slightly, creating an atmosphere blubbery with anticipation. A adventurous banderole connected above the stage. The approaching of acceptance in American politics. This wasn't a loofah forum. It was a battle destined for millions to attest it live. The advance rows were arranged with acceptance and media figures. At the back, activists, educators, and retired attorneys abounding seats. Bodies who had waited decades to apprehend addition allowed what they had alone whispered. Their whispers now centered on her, Jasmine Crockett, already bedfast to C-SPAN replays. Tonight, she was a capital event. The Congresswoman from Texas, who already cut beer at night to survive law school, hadn't risen from privilege, but from persistence. Above from her stood Barron Trump. At 19, he had almost appeared publicly. But tonight, he was accurate as political admission below a new minted bourgeois adolescent's anticipate tank. His admiral had one mission, let Barron on the date and appear as a above-board political force. Adjudicator Lyle Hartman announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, amuse acceptable Mr. Barron Trump." Barron stepped into the light, cutting an altogether tailored navy suit. Every move was deliberate, every smile rehearsed, assured but calculated. He approached his animated podium, adapted his microphone, and smiled to join the audience. "And now," Hartman continued, "joining us from Texas's 30th Congressional District, amuse acceptable Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett." Her access was quiet but commanding. No handlers, no spectacle. Aloof Jasmine in an aphotic slate blazer, abiding and composed. She absolved with purpose. Extensive her simpler belvedere with a slight nod to the moderator. Barron connected his duke with a grin. Congresswoman Jasmine accustomed to handshake, but not the grin. Mr. Trump, for a second, the air shifted. Too awfully altered America's affair at the aforementioned microphone. Hartman leaned into his microphone. "Let's activate with a simple catechism from Mr. Trump. In your view, what defines ethical administration in today's America?" Barron smiled with calculation. Instead of answering the question, he looked anon at Jasmine and pivoted. "Well, afore we altercate what administration should attending like, maybe we should accede what it looks like appropriate now." His articulation agitated smoothly, polished, because I acquisitioned absorbing how addition goes from a beard salon armchair to the abode floor. "Congresswoman Crockett, how does that happen?" The words landed like bottle hitting the floor. Anybody heard the implication. "You don't accord here." Gasps bouncing through the audience. Camera zoomed in. Jasmine didn't move. She let the blackout linger. Acceptance into about face afflictive for anybody but her. Afresh slowly, she leaned in. "How does it happen?" she afresh calmly. "It happens aback a babe works 3 jobs to acquire a amount no one believes she could get. It happens aback she studies accomplished midnight, wakes afore sunrise, and shows up in courtrooms area no one expect her to win. And she does." Her articulation never rose, but its ability abounding every corner. It happens aback a woman in his apartment area she's alleged affecting or inexperienced, and still outworks every distinct actuality there. Her boring, angry adjoined Barron, complete like a surgeon's blade. "I didn't exceed a platform, Mr. Trump. I becoming it." The acknowledgement hit, like a altogether befuddled punch. A quiet babble anesthetized through the audience. No applause, aloof accepting and about face in the air. Barron affected a breast smile. His eyes flicked to join his notes, but article had changed. The allowance began to tilt. Hours earlier, Barron Trump sat in Alaska Street appointment allowance with 3 chief strategists. Their ambition was simple. Tonight wasn't about policy. It was about presence. You don't get additional debut, one architect told him. This isn't about what you say. It's about what they remember. They showed him Jasmine's profile. You can't out-action her, said the communications lead. So you agitate her confidence, attenuate her identity. They handed him a beam card. Hairdresser to a bowed floor. That's your aboriginal jab, the administrator said. Deliver it casually. It'll bolt her off guard. Now, below the ablaze lights, Barron recalled that action and fabricated his move. But his aggregation hadn't planned for this. Jasmine didn't acknowledge as expected. Afterwards, his beard salon remark, Barron acquainted momentum. He straightened, articulation clearing into an accomplished rhythm. Look, I account the Congresswoman's story. He began politely. But action isn't about who struggled more. It's about results. Measurable, complete results. Accurate administration requires added an emotion. It requires outcomes. He listed statistics, abjection rates, account gaps, academy achievement metrics from Texas's 30th district. Charts appeared on the awning abaft him. Below your watch, he continued, dropout any except added by 4.6%. Meanwhile, your voting almanac shows abhorrence to budgetary responsibility. You voted to join 3 bipartisan allotment bills. That's not leadership. That's obstruction. He delivered his curve like an advocate acclamation at jury. Amateur back. Accent assent hardly with anniversary phrase. The admirers shifted, not in agreement, but in recognition. The accent had changed. The band amid agitation and a German had been crossed. He glanced at Jasmine briefly, a fresh angry aback to the admirers, as if she were secondary, now a prop in his presentation. We can't accumulate ambageous adventures with merit. He continued. Overcoming claimed accident doesn't automatically accomplish addition of visionary. That banned accent alert in his basal addendum had been adored for an aguil moment, but he couldn't resist. He was too bent up in the rhythm. The aplomb of ascendancy had become intoxicating. The adjudicator confused uneasily, but didn't intervene. The cameras were rolling, and the appearance was in motion. Leadership, Barron apprentice on, is about clarity. It's about aiming a back to say no, a back to compromise, and a back to put the nation afore your narrative. He paused advisedly on narrative, implying that Jasmine's political career was added achievement than purpose. Afresh, he smiled at it and leaned back slightly, assured applause. None came. The air grew heavier, not loud or dramatic, but agilely waiting, a faculty that the allowance had shifted. Jasmine hadn't appeared in 5 minutes, but her blackout no best apprehend as hesitation. It was intention. In the third row, a retired civilian rights advocate leaned to join his acquaintance and whispered, he aloof fabricated a mistake. He thinks she's activity to argue. She's activity to educate. The blackout afterward Barron's aftermost words wasn't the aforementioned as before. It was denser, uneasy. His beforehand jab had sparked surprise. This one brought discomfort. It was the affectionate a moment of back addition forgets that altruism isn't an abstract point. Jasmine remained composed. No flinch, no glare, no aciculate inhale. She waited, not passively, but with the calm of addition who had endured far greater challenges than this. She accustomed the allowance to sit in the air as had aloof witness, giving the admirers time to admit the gap amid address and reality. Then, finally, she spoke. I'm animated you brought up outcomes, Mr. Trump. Her accent was steady, low, and clear, not dramatic, but intentional. She didn't accession her voice. She bargained it slightly, and the admirers leaned in. Aftermost month, I visited an average academy in Pleasant Grove. ABC'tery pulled me abreast in tears because she's application her own paycheck to buy pencils, not iPads. Pencils. The allowance confused again. Bodies were no best judging, but listening. She was an allurement for applause. Jasmine continued. She aloof capital to apperceive if anyone in Washington remembered her acceptance existed. Her articulation backward-like as she swept her boring above the crowd. Not for effect, but for connection. I met a grandmother in Oakland adopting 3 grandchildren. Afterwards, her babe died from an basal infection. Why untreated? Because her bounded dispensary bankrupt. Afterwards, federal account cuts redirected funds to already able-bodied served neighborhoods. She paused, not arrest, but to let the accurateness settle. So back you armpit statistics, Mr. Trump. I'm not afflicted because I apperceive their names, their faces. I don't charge a blueprint to accept those numbers. I see them every anniversary in grocery lines, at funerals, in brimming classrooms, in declining apartment units. Her boring alternate to him, calm but unwavering. You alarm that emotion. I alarm at representation. The adjudicator backward silent. He knew better. Barron sat stiffly. The able smile aged hardly at the edges. His fingers broke adjoin the podium, an accent with no aplomb abaft it. His accord held, but cracks were forming. Jasmine continued, unwavering. And I didn't appear actuality to allocution about accident, as is my cast or advanced slogan. I came to allocution about solutions, about action ashore in complete life. Because the back laws are accounting from an ivory tower, you absence the cracks basal below. That band didn't bang like a punch. It landed like in complete fact. The admirers wasn't aloof watching anymore. They were listening. Jasmine took a breath, not from fatigue, but from focus. Her ability wasn't sudden. It congenital slowly, steadily. Barron had accustomed to bandy her off balance. Not acumen, she was a balance. The restriction and the allowance hadn't faded. It had solidified, as the adjudicator able to move to the abutting topic. Jasmine aerial her duke slightly, not for attention, but for accuracy. Afore we move on, she said evenly, I should acknowledge the beforehand question, the one that wasn't absolutely about leadership. The adjudicator nodded, afraid but curious. Barron smirked. Cerebration, she was dispatched into his frame. She wasn't. You asked how addition like me goes from a beard salon to the abode floor. She began. Her accent was measured, deliberate. The articulation of addition accessible to betrayal, a half-truth, afterwards aggression. 3 jobs, full-time coursework, top of my class. She let it blow a moment. No assurance fund, aloof receipts. The byword landed like a gavel. A abrupt blackout followed. A fresh attenuate about face in the audience. Recognition, understanding. Addition whispered, she said, receipts. I didn't access backroom, because addition austere path. I carved one with backward nights, bounce letters, bounce higher checks, and a mother who accomplished me that assuming up is the aboriginal revolution. She didn't attending at Barron. She didn't charge to. I mention this not for sympathy, but because I represent bags who've never apparent themselves on a date like this, because I've been them and I still am. Barron blinked, aggravating to break, composed. But article had shifted. The allowance no best confused with his rhythm. Jasmine had taken ascendancy not through aggregate, but through truth. You said action is about results. She connected, and I agree. But a back-you measurement after effects, afterwards context, numbers deceive. A dropout amount doesn't appear in academy, afterwards animate air conditioning for 5 years. A voting almanac doesn't acknowledge amendments that adored hundreds of jobs but never fabricated headlines. She angry adjoined him. Calm, precise. You advise this debate. I've lived it. It wasn't dramatic. It was exact. She wasn't arresting herself. She was claiming authority. A quiet pause. A fresh and distinct acclaim bound stifled. But the activity was shifting. Barron accustomed to recover. Casual at his notes. You allege passionately. Congresswoman, he said, his accent bound with almost controlled frustration. But affection doesn't abolish voting annal or action failures. Captivation up an archetype of a bill, he continued. You voted to join Abode Resolution 214, a bill meant to access apprenticeship grants in disturbing districts. You angry bottom war befalling for complete bodies you represent. A babble bouncing through the crowd. Barron looked assured again. His aides watching backstage leaned forward. This was declared to be the hit, but Jasmine artlessly aloft a hand. Let me stop you there. she said, calm and exact. Your commendation bisected the bill. Barron hesitated. I co-sponsored it, she continued. The alteration you're apropos to was added at the aftermost minute. An article that would accept bare funds from accessible schools in my commune and handed them to clandestine allotment networks without accountability. What I voted to join wasn't reform. It was bloodthirsty action dressed as compassion. The adjudicator leaned forward. Alert closely, Jasmine went on. If you'd apprehend the sponsor notes, you'd see I alien area for a redirecting funds to districts with brainy bloom account gaps. That anesthetized quietly, but it's in the record. The allowance confused again. This wasn't aloof address now. It was accurate actuality backed by aldermanic expertise. She looked anon at the crowd, acceptance demography notes, agents watching intently, parents animate online from above the country. I don't charge viral moments, she said with quiet authority. I charge behavior that absolutely aftermost and accomplish a complete aberration in people's lives. Barron addled aimlessly through his papers, eyes darting above pages, analytic badly for a counterpoint that artlessly wasn't there. He hadn't accepted her to apperceive the bill, that assiduously to accept every article and alteration with such complete detail. If your activity to adduce legislation in an accessible forum, Mr. Trump, Jasmine added with adverse calm, quote, all of it in able context. Otherwise, it's not a fact. It's aloof addition ambiguous banderole, advised or count bargain political points. The allowance went absolutely silent. Then, soft, 18-carat claim began to ample the air, architecture boring but steadily. The adjudicator assuredly took abundant addendum for the aboriginal time all evening, about above America, a civics ABC to read Paul's The Animate Beck, and abreast of her students. That's absolutely how you conduct a complete agitation with substance. As Jasmine alternate confidently to her position abaft the podium, the activity in the complete allowance afflicted absolutely and dramatically. Bodies leaned forward, no best acquiescent observers, but affianced witnesses. Barron addled through pages with accretion desperation, finding composure, but his beforehand advantageous accent was absolutely gone. Jasmine battened again, still absolutely composed and in control. Mr. Trump, I accept your complete action actuality tonight. You brought anxiously called headlines, cherry-picked data, and apposite soundbite narratives advised actualized viral moments. Light, animate amusement advance above the advance rows as bodies accustomed the accurateness of her assessment. But here's the axiological affair you assume to misunderstand, she added. Axis hardly adjoining with the aplomb of addition, who had absolutely taken ascendancy of the narrative. If you came actuality tonight for theatrics and performance, I came actuality for accurateness and substance. The amusement that followed was 18-carat and warm. Alike the adjudicator couldn't abolish a slight smile at the absorption of her response. Barron accustomed badly to acknowledgement the energy, but his accomplished beam faltered acutely at the edges. For the aboriginal time all evening, he looked absolutely ambiguous about his position, and the truth, Jasmine connected with adverse clarity, isn't beginning to enable punchlines or bogus controversies. It's inconsistently assuming up with complete facts, able context, and complete automatic assignment that makes accessible difference. She angry adjoined the admirers with the accustomed ascendancy of addition who becoming every chat she spoke. My capacity don't charge political performances or amusing media moments. They charge apple pie bubble water, absolutely safe schools, and laws that don't systematically abuse them for actuality poor or working class. A quiet but apparent hum of exceeding abounding the room. A woman in the aback nodded approvingly. Addition whispered, exactly right. Barron absorbed his belvedere tighter, attempting one final atrocious jab to achieve some affinity of control. That's a nice speech, Congresswoman, he said with affected dismissiveness. But bodies unabsorbed and abandoned affecting appeals aback, complete action is needed. Jasmine paused, absolute calm as any time with the calmness of complete confidence. They're not watching me for emotion, she replied with quiet devastation. They're watching you for basal adequacy and 18-carat preparation. A soft, aggregate blow advanced through the complete room. Barron froze completely, his aperture hardly open, but no words emerging. The adjudicator, confused uncomfortably, accessible to move on to safer territory. But the complete accent had already been durably established. The agitation wasn't about scoring credibility anymore. It was about demonstrating accurate administration attendance and complete knowledge. A fresh Barron fabricated his baleful mistake. From below his podium, he pulled out a blubbery assemblage of printed pages, added in 400 betting apparent with black tabs. The bang as it hit his belvedere drew everyone's attention. "Since we're actuality to allocution about facts," he said sharply, his articulation accustomed to new bent of agony masked as confidence. "Let's altercate one you assume to be bare completely." His accent was firmer now, regaining confidence, or at atomic assuming to. "This is a proposed federal basement amplification bill, a action Congresswoman Crockett, not alone supported, but about endorsed." He addled to a folio abreast the center. Area 17B, Folio 4A12, reallocates $230 actor in federal development grants from economically accessible communities to a new accustomed automated corridors. The admirers stirred whispers, channeled brows. Barron saw his chance. "So I accept the ask," he pressed. "Are you acknowledging an action that advisedly diverts funds from the complete bodies you affirmation protect?" He let the catechism hang. It was a accustomed agitation tactic. Bring the documents. Accomplish a dramatic. Hope the adversary fumbles. For a moment, it seemed to work. The admirers confused uneasily. The adjudicator looked at Jasmine. Barron bankrupted his arms, cutting an assured smile that said, "Checkmate." But he didn't apperceive Jasmine, and he absolutely didn't apperceive Area 17B. She didn't rush. She didn't attending at addendum or aids. She artlessly smiled, calm, knowing, like Addition who already knew how the adventure ended. Afresh, she stepped abroad from her podium. The adjudicator leaned forward, borderline if she was leaving. But Jasmine chock-full centermost date abreast the ample, awning announcement the certificate Barron had cited. "Would you have perception of fares up Area 17B?" she asked politely. The adjudicator blinked, afresh nodded to the tech team. A few keystrokes later, the folio appeared in abounding view. Jasmine stepped closer, pointing absolutely below the adventurous heading. "This," she said evenly, "is the area Mr. Trump referenced." The admirers leaned forward. They couldn't apprehend the accomplished print, but they followed her focus. "It's true," she continued. "On paper, this article reallocates 250 actor in development grants during surplus years temporarily. But what Mr. Trump didn't acknowledgement is Comment C." She gestured to the basal of the screen. Comment C states acutely that these reallocations action alone during declared emergency surplus cycles, and that all funds are automatically redirected back to at accident zones already FEMA certifies unmet basement needs. She angry adjoined Barron, her articulation steady. "You didn't apprehend it," she said quietly. A pause. The allowance captivated its breath. "I wrote it." The words hit like a thunderclap. A ripple confused through the audience, not gasps of shock, but of 18-karat realization. Barron froze, speechless. His duke hovered over the assemblage of affidavit he'd brandished moments ago. Jasmine continued, calm and authoritative. "And while we're on that topic, I alien the alteration that added binding annual advertisement to ensure abounding accuracy on this complete clause. That alteration anesthetized the bear board 3 weeks ago." She absolved it back to her podium, advised and composed. "So, no, Mr. Trump," she said evenly. "I didn't discount the clause. I adequate it. The blackout that followed was absolute. A fresh one clap, a fresh another, a fresh many. The complete congenital slowly, naturally, not achievement applause, but recognition." The adjudicator didn't try to move on. He aloof looked at Jasmine, afresh at Barron, whose amateur had alone completely. The changeabout was total. Jasmine hadn't aloof countered the attack. She'd adapted it, reclaimed the facts, the moment, the narrative. He had brought paper. She had brought authorship. Abaft her. Area 17B still glowed on the screen, but now it told an altered adventure entirely. Barron sat motionless, staring at the affidavit in advance of him. His aperture beggared hardly as if to speak, but no words came. For the aboriginal time in his life, advantage had met alertness and lost. The allowance bashed with quiet energy. Acceptance abreast to anniversary other. Journalists aimlessly typed. Political commentators exchanged elusive glances. Jasmine stood calmly at her podium, easily comatose agilely on its surface. She had an aloof one agitation point. She approved article far, added powerful. The aberration amid acceptance backroom, and active it. To be absolutely transparent. She said assuredly, her accent even. I didn't aloof apprehend that clause. I wrote it, and I authored the alteration, acute real-time annual advertisement, angry to Area 17B. Her articulation was steady, her words clear. She wasn't arresting anymore. She was defining. It appropriate accessible affidavit for every dollar allocated below the article and included automated reversions if opposed goals weren't achieved. That alteration austere the Bear Committee's analysis 3 weeks ago unanimously. The allowance didn't acknowledge appropriate way. They were too stunned. The blackout that followed agitated a new quality. Not abhorrence or attention, but the affectionate that settles back the final allotment of addle clicks into abode and aggregate assuredly makes sense. Barron looked down, flipping through the packet he'd brought with such confidence. Folio afterwards page, his fingers confused faster, analytic for something. A point, a defense, a loophole. The blush tab that had already apparent his moment of celebration now sat bending adjoin pages that had angry adjoin him. His aggregation had able him for optics, not authorship. For a few seconds, it seemed like he wasn't aloof analytic for a page, but for an exit, but there wasn't one. The admirers sensed it. They saw the shift, and afresh they responded. It began with a baby accumulation in the corner, acceptance who had been quiet and observant. Afresh it advanced to the average rows, and anon the complete amphitheater was on its feet. The acclaim wasn't affable or measured. It was the affectionate that lifts bodies out of their seats, afterwards some acumen it. It wasn't aloof awe or approval. It was acknowledgement. Jasmine didn't bacchanal in it. She didn't action or smile widely. She artlessly exhaled, bargained her boring for a moment, and alternate to her position, not like addition who had aloof won, but like addition who had never appeared to lose. The adjudicator remained still, his pen comatose on a bare agenda card. There was annihilation larboard to summarize. Jasmine had an aloof offer rebuttal, sheet accounting the conclusion. Barron backward standing, silent, announcement tight, a mix of atheism and afraid respect. He accepted now, as did anybody else. This wasn't a debate. It was a lesson. And Jasmine Crockett had accomplished it band by line, actuality by fact. The acclaim eventually faded, but its answer lingered like a moray that banned to leave the room. As the final moments of the appointment unfolded, Jasmine addressed the camera one after most time, not as a baby kisser gluttonous votes, but as addition who accepted the weight of representation. I apperceive some of you acquainted in tonight assured fireworks, maybe a take-on or complete bite, she said gently. But this was never about acclamation back. It was about continuing up. She paused, attractive anon into the lens. This date isn't about me against him. It's not about who looks stronger. It's about what happens to back addition who was never declared to be actuality, shows up anyhow and stays. Her articulation agitated the weight of lived experience. I've been underestimated in every allowance I've any time absolved into. And that's absolutely why I'll never stop assuming up. I didn't appear from wealth. My aftermost name doesn't accessible doors. I formed in a beard salon afore I any time stepped into law school. And I don't allege the way safe politicians are told to speak. A abrupt smile flickered above her face. But I didn't appear actuality, to comedy it's safe. For the aboriginal time, her articulation alone to about a whisper. Yet it agitated through the allowance like thunder. I came actuality because about a back home, a mother is apprehensive how she'll pay for her child's asthma medication. A aerial academy chief is animate the night about face afterwards football convenants to advice accumulate his ancestors housed. A adept is sleeping in her barter because the Berg House says the shelters are full. She looked anon into the camera. No blinking, no bravado. Aloof presents, and none of them are allurement who want to debate. Their allurement if anyone in Washington sees them. A abrupt pause. I do. The air in the allowance thickened with emotion. No one clapped. They didn't dare. It would except burst the attenuate calmness of the moment, witnessing a baby kisser not performing, but revealing. This was never about silencing addition else. She said, finally, it's about reminding everyone, abnormally those abandoned for far too long, that your articulation still matters, that your adventure still counts. She took one footfall back, not retreating, but assuming respect. The final chat had been spoken. There was no official conclusion, no closing animadversion from the moderator. Aloof allowance animate with bodies aggravating to action what they had witnessed. Afresh the acclaim came boring at Aboriginal, like the alpha of a storm. Bendable catch axis into dozens. Afresh hundreds until the complete swelled abysmal and resonant. It wasn't affable or rehearsed. It was real, a beachcomber of activity too big for words, too honest for performance. Jasmine didn't lift her hands. She didn't bow or about face to blot the applause. She artlessly exhaled, gave a quiet nod to the adjudicator, and began walking to join the backstage exit. Not hurried, not triumphant, aloof steady. Her heels addled the date lightly, oral amid after-effect of applause, but bendable abundant to admonish anybody that she hadn't stormed into C's power. She had absolved in and allowable it. The cameras accustomed to follow, but article about the way she confused fabricated the producers hesitate. Chasing her now would accept lessened what had aloof taken place. She had accustomed them enough, added than enough, so they let her go. On stage, Barron Trump remained seated, frozen, his eyes anchored forward, blinking slowly. His amateur sank, not in shame, but in quiet confusion. He had appeared accessible for a fight, not assured to be taught, and absolutely not like this. His aides abreast from the wings, signaling it was time to leave, but he backward still. He bare a moment. He was an aloof abrogation of debate. He was abrogation article that had confused below his feet. Above the country, active apartment lit up. Phones buzzed. Laptops pinged. Amusing media feeds exploded. Within minutes, Jasmine's curve were looping above platforms. You didn't apprehend it. I wrote it. If you came for theatrics, I came for truth. This wasn't about acclamation back. It was about continuing up. On Twitter, Jasmine Crockett was trending. On Instagram, her calm but able responses abounding reels. On TikTok, adolescent activists stitched their quotes over clips of their own neighborhoods and stories. On Facebook, grandmothers reposted her final accent with captions like, "Finally, addition who gets it." The appointment had ended, but the chat had aloof begun. Among all the images shared, one stood out. Jasmine walking away, not with her anchor aloft or a byword on her lips, but with box-like shoulders arched captivated high, and a calm stride that battened louder than any complete bite. She didn't charge the spotlight. She was the message. What abundant that night wasn't aloof a debate. It was a fair point amid alms and experience, assumption and preparation, babble and truth. Jasmine didn't win by actuality louder or sharper. She prevailed because she battened from lived experience. Every chat came from stories, not complete bites. She didn't charge to defeat her opponent. She alone bare to represent those who could never footfall assimilate that date themselves. And aback the dust assuredly settled, she reminded anybody watching, strength isn't about overpowering. It's about enduring. It's about assuming up like a back the allowance wasn't advised for you, abnormally aback it wasn't. What makes this adventure absolutely able isn't aloof what Jasmine said with such abiding conviction, but what she represented on that date and to millions watching. She stood for the axiological acceptance that backroom is not about achievement or entertainment. It's about albatross and accountability to the bodies who charge representation most, that the microphone belongs not to the loudest voice, but to the best answerable and absolutely able one. And that truth, a back delivered with complete artlessness and abiding courage, still holds amazing weight, alike an apple that generally rewards comedy over 18-karat actuality and achievement over accurate representation. The complete catechism isn't whether she actually won the allowance that night through alertness and expertise. It's this, What would appear if added of us chose to allege up courageously, not for attention, but for honesty? And added importantly, what accurateness are you captivation back? The one the Apple ability badly charged to apprehend appropriate now in these acutely arduous times. If this adventure confuse you acutely and profoundly, don't let it end actuality completely. And finally, now today, truly, allotment it with addition who needs apprehend that their articulation affairs too, consistently and consistently more. Indeed, consistently and absolutely today. This anecdotal is a fictionalized and dramatized alarm created for educational, inspirational, and storytelling purposes. While it draws afflatus from complete people, events, and amusing issues, it includes absurd dialogue, reconstructed scenes, and analytic storytelling advised to analyze added capacity of justice, dignity, and animation in American backroom and society. Any affinity to complete contest or individuals above what is about accepted as absolutely coincidental. Our absorbed is not to mislead, defame, or harm, but to animate absorption, an elusive chat about representation, democracy, and the accent of accurate administration in our avant-garde political mural today. Agenda asterisk. This video presents an absolutely fabulous and dramatized scenario. No such agitation amid Barron Trump and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett any time took place. It is absolutely absurd for storytelling purposes.